to 4 hours daily. Police in Lusaka have recovered 391 tons of suspected stolen cobalt from a warehouse in Lusaka's Makeni area. And the New Dawn government has been urged to amend relevant legislations to require competitive power procurement and disclosure of power purchase agreements and tariff negotiation processes. Energy Minister Peter Kapala has announced the revision in load shading hours from 8 to 4 hours daily following an improvement in water inflows into the major hydropower reservations, namely Kariba, Kafue Gorge and Iteji-Teji. Speaking at a media briefing, Mr. Kapala says ZESCO customers will now experience a daily load shading of up to 4 hours daily. He says with this adjustment, customers will have power for a total of 20 hours in a day as opposed to the previous 16 hours. Mr. Kapala says the improvement in water inflows has resulted in increased power generation at Kariba North Bank Power Station, Kafue Gorge Power Stations, Kafue Gorge Lower Power Station, Iteji-Teji Power Station and Victoria Falls Power Station. He says with this improvement, the total electricity generation has now increased by 305 megawatts, bringing the total national generation to 2,215 megawatts. The minister says this increased generation is against the current power demand of 2,380 megawatts against a power deficit of 165 megawatts.
From my last statement of 31st January 2023, there has been an improvement in water inflows into our major hydropower reservoirs, namely Kariba, Kafue Gorge, and Iteji-Teji. I'm delighted to announce that this improvement in the water inflows has resulted in increased power generation at Kariba North Bank Power Stations, Kafue Gorge Power Station, Kafue Gorge Lower Power Station, Iteji-Teji, and Victoria Power Station. With this improvement, total electricity generation has now increased by 305 megawatts, bringing the total national generation to 2,215 megawatts. This increased generation is against the current power demand of 2,380 megawatts, resulting in a reduced power deficit from 470 megawatts to 165 megawatts. Given the above development, the load shedding duration has since been reviewed and revised downwards from 8 hours to 4 hours. In this regard, customers will now be load shed once in a day for 4 hours only. With this adjustment, customers will have the power for a total of 20 hours in a day as opposed to the previous 16 hours of power supply. I wish to assure the general public and the business community that government is doing everything possible to normalize the situation. Some of the planned interventions by government include importation of 100 to 200 megawatts of power from EDM of Mozambique, which will further reduce the power deficit.
Meanwhile, Mr. Kapala says that the government is only exporting 10% of the electricity. He says that there is no need to destabilize the electricity market by stopping power exports, as it may be needed in future.
I said that we are only exporting about 10%, and you see, you cannot jeopardize future market by doing away or amounts only 10% of what we are exporting. If we are exporting about 50%, then there should be reason for that. Mind you, we have to go back some of the power that we're exporting. So, looking at what I've just given today, we should be okay. Let's not destabilize the market. We will need it, in future.
Meanwhile, Mr. Kapala has disclosed that 15% of the Tazama pipeline has been cleaned in readiness for its conversion to start transporting refined petroleum products.
I'm happy to report that the government has made significant strides in the conversion of the Tazama pipeline. The pipeline conversion process began on the 24th January 2023, and so far 15% of the pipeline has already been cleaned. This conversion will result in a reduction in the cost of transportation of low sulfur diesel of up to 60% and also reduce tear and wear on our roads. At this juncture, I wish to assure the nation that the government, through my ministry, will continue working on measures to stabilize and reduce the cost of petroleum products on the Zambian market. Other additional measures, which include bilateral negotiations with Zimbabwe for use of the Zimbabwe oil pipeline to cut down on transportation costs of petrol, thereby contribute to a reduction in the cost of petrol in the country. Additionally, we are close to completing the Lusaka bulk fuel depot, which is currently standing at 99.5% completion. This infrastructure will provide critical storage for strategic petroleum reserves. Further, the government will introduce a private sector-led bulk procurement system to ensure security of supply and predictability in the market. To this end, our government remains committed to its mission to reform the petroleum subsector and improve the livelihoods of Zambians.
Police in Lusaka have recovered 391 tons of cobalt ore and cobalt concentrates from a warehouse in Makeni area believed to have been stolen or unlawfully obtained. Police Deputy Spokesperson Danny Mwale has told journalists at the scene that the cobalt ore and concentrates are concealed in huge bags, each weighing 1 ton, are believed to have been brought by 2 named companies. Mr. Mwale says police were acting on a tip-off from members of the public. He says the value of the seized materials is yet to be ascertained. Mr. Mwale adds that police investigations into the matter are continuing and that no arrest has been made so far.
Okay, thank you very much, colleagues. We are here in Makeni area in Lusaka, where police have recovered these bags. You are saying these are cobalt oil and cobalt concentrates. So these are believed to have been stolen or unlawfully obtained. So these were brought in here by 2 named companies, and police, based on a tip from the members of the public, came to recover these bags. Altogether, they are 391 by 1 ton. So we're talking about 391 tons of cobalt oil and cobalt concentrate. The value of these items are yet to be ascertained. So as we are saying, police, we are up with investigations, but as it is, we have seized these materials. The materials you are seeing behind me, they are many 391 bags. Each bag is 1 ton. So we have seized these materials, and for now they are under police, they are in police custody. So we are up with investigations, but we just want to let the members of the public know that we are up with the game. So as it is, this is how far we can update you, members of the public. This is in Makeni area. So far we haven't made any arrests, but our officers are following the leads. We are up and running just to make sure that we bring the culprits to book. We've got the names of the companies that supplied these materials here, and very soon, members of the public will be able to be updated. But as it is, these things now are under our custody. Yes, thank you very much.
So what are they mainly used for, and what led police to deduce that they're illegal?
Okay, this is cobalt ore and cobalt concentrate. So we are working hand in hand with organization responsible, the authorities responsible for these items. You see, there is a ministry, a line ministry that is responsible for this type of material, copper and all these minerals. So we are working hand in hand with them, just to make sure that we do the right thing. So as it is now, we are up with investigations with the line ministry.
A consultant engaged by Transparency International Zambia (TIZ) to conduct a case study on the transparency of power purchase agreements in Zambia has recommended that government should amend relevant legislations to require competitive power procurement and disclosure of PPAs and tariff negotiation processes. Making a presentation of research findings during stakeholders' forum on power purchase agreements organized by TIZ, Dr. Bernard Tembo is further advising government to enact the Access to Information Bill to ensure citizens' right to know is guaranteed, including power sector information. Dr. Tembo says if the Access to Information Bill is enacted, it will help and create the level of trust in government dealings.
But at the end of the day, what we all want is to have reliable electricity. So it's important that we keep an open mind, because that's the only way we are going to grow the sector. That's the only way we are going to make the sector sustainable. And that outcome is what we all desire for ourselves at individual level and also for our country as Zambia. So okay, so this is the outline. I'll give a general overview or an introduction to the energy sector. And this will largely focus on Zambia, to just be very brief. Then I'll talk a bit on what a purchase power agreement is. Thereafter, I'll move to purchase power agreements in Zambia. Then we'll provide recommendations. Now my controller has moved. The controller of slides. Okay. Next slide. Okay, so this is broadly the structure of the energy sector and many other sectors, right? So you have the supplier. In this case, you can think of it, if you're talking of electricity, you can think of it as generation. Then you have transportation in the middle. The grid lines that you see when you're driving, say, from Siabonga into Lusaka, or you're driving along Leopards Hill, or when you're on the Commonwealth, you see the grid lines. That's what is generally referred to as transportation. So you're transporting electricity from the generation point to some point. And then the last bit, or the third bit of the sector of the electricity system, is the consumption. When consumers are here, we heard that people don't want to be load-shedded. Why? Because you are consumers and it annoys you, so you not buy, and just go make a loss, or CEC will make a loss, or a particular company will make a loss. So on the generation side, which is the supply, that's where you find a lot of issues in terms of big money issues. On the other end of the consumption, that's where you find a lot of issues to do with transmission losses. So when you hear transmission losses or distribution losses, just think of it as a loss to the supplier of that electricity. So if you are not connected properly,
Vice President W.K. Mtele Nalumango has insisted that roller meal is more nutritious and better food. Mrs. Nalumango's recent statement, where she encouraged people to eat roller meal, which was cheaper than breakfast, was not well received by certain sections of society. Speaking on Friday's edition of Let the People Talk on Radio Phoenix, Mrs. Nalumango says that she has eaten roller meal and has been eating the same for years. She has since challenged the politicians who wanted to politicize her recent statement on roller meal to be sincere if they eat a breakfast meal in their homes. The Vice President says most people prefer eating roller meal because of its nutritious value. Mrs. Nalumango says that she can be called names, but that she is not ashamed to promote healthy eating. She states that by promoting healthy eating, she is not looking down on anyone.
Be sincere, Kalaba. You call yourself a child of God. I wouldn't mind if you come out. I've never come to your home. If you eat breakfast, I am challenging you. You are probably listening. Do you eat honestly? Don't be political, because if you really believe in the God I believe in, He will judge you for lying. Do you eat breakfast or roller meal? Dokota Kambwili. Do you eat breakfast or roller meal? Maybe I ask a minister, Mulenga Chipoka, do you eat breakfast or roller meal? People have migrated. And if we don't use, I appreciate diggers. I don't know whether they are anywhere near here. I appreciate your analysis of what I said, that it was the correct thing said at the right time. At a wrong time. Sorry.
That's okay.
At a wrong time. I'll tell you, the right time for change, for mindset change, for paradigm shift is in a crisis. Ichilengalelelele kusangwa. People will change better. Not when you are in a comfort zone. Even God will make it uncomfortable for you to move. But this is not deliberate to put price. Don't misunderstand me. It is using the time to say, can we shift? Can we shift from the expensive but not as nutritious as this? And therefore, I'm not ashamed, Zambians. You can call me any name. I have a duty to promote healthy eating under this act, and as a mother. In my own home, my grandchildren, they come and they look at my food. But now, they learn over time. It is roller everywhere. In my family, it is roller. So I'm not saying something because I want to look down on anybody. I have a duty to promote health eating. I'm not saying stop on Shima. And now, you, Luchi, did you read again? Was it Master or what? Yesterday, where the president of the defunct Patriotic Front was saying, Nalumango, if we ask about fertilizer, she will say go for cow dung. And his explanation, I took time to read it for myself. In the end, he said, where do we have enough animals to produce enough cow dung? I hope you understand, Luchi. That is an admission that cow dung is the better manure, is the better fertilizer for health crops that people also eat. He admitted. The challenge there is, do we have enough animals? No, we don't. And because we don't, we can't tell people to stop. There are two things. We can't tell people to stop using fertilizer.
Community Action Against Corruption has received with disbelief Zambia's stagnation on the latest Corruption Perception Index report for year ended 2022, which has revealed that the country has maintained its score of 33 out of 100 for a third consecutive year. The Corruption Perception Index is a report which aggregates data from a number of different sources that provides perceptions by business people and country experts on the level of corruption in the public sector. Organization Chief Executive Officer Brighton Tembo tells QTV News that there is no way Zambia can maintain the same score for 3 years in a row. Mr. Tembo believes the UPND government has sealed many corruption loopholes since coming into power, such as the awarding of contracts, purchase of government prerequisites, among others, wondering why Zambia has maintained the same score of 33.
There was also that reduction in abuse of office for personal gains. All these were reductions in 2022. Then they are saying 3 consecutive years we are stuck at position number 33. In 2020 we are under the PF, where there was too much corruption in public procurement, too much corruption in contracts under infrastructure development. So how can we compare? Let us take the 2 years, 2020 and 2022. So we don't expect statistics to be stagnant at that point. So there must be a lot of explanation to be done in order to justify why Zambia is stuck, because we expect a significant improvement if there was a significant reduction in bribery taking.
The National Association for Smallholder Farmers is disappointed that the country has continued to experience high mealie meal prices when there are experts that can help solve this recurring problem. Association Executive Director Frank Kayula says there is need for long-term and not short-term interventions in stabilizing mealie meal prices. Dr. Kayula says that the intermittent release of cheap maize by the Food Reserve Agency FRM to millers is merely a short-term solution that will always give headaches to the leadership and the consumers. He says that the government must address the root cause of expensive maize, which is the main ingredient in mealie meal production. Dr. Kayula notes that the cost of maize production is very high because of using expensive chemical fertilizers, which gobble more than 65% of the total cost of maize production.
With high productivity, smallholder farmers can produce a bag of maize at 40 kwacha per bag, as opposed to the current production cost of more than 175 kwacha per bag. And you and me will agree that at 40 kwacha per bag cost of production, farmers can even make 100% profit. And the maize bag can be sold below 100 kwacha, and they will be happy because they will have made more than 100% profit. This is why smallholder farmer organizations have also now formed an alliance so that we can have one voice. We are now working with an alliance for smallholder farmer organization in Zambia, which is called ASFOS, to strengthen the voice of the farmer. We also work independently as organizations to fulfill our independent mandate, but we are collaborating to ensure coherent messages to farmers and to stakeholders. Please, let's help the farmers to produce productively, to improve on productivity. Then the country will reap the benefit through low food prices.
The opposition Zambia Must Prosper has urged President Hakainde Hichilema to take a strong stance against the victimization of some civil servants serving in government. Party spokesperson Twaimo Mwenda says that this will allow civil servants carry out their duties without intimidation and undue influence. Mr. Mwenda says that the party is concerned over acts of victimization of dedicated civil servants and private sector players such as millers who were recently labeled as PF sympathizers, which he says is ultimately affecting the delivery of services to citizens. Mr. Mwenda says that the party has continued to receive complaints from some civil servants across the country over the victimization they are facing in government ministries for purportedly belonging to the former ruling party, the PF.
He must also take a swipe on his ministers and some UPND officials to desist from accusing civil servants of belonging to opposition political parties, because this eventually will erode public confidence in the civil service. We saw, on a very sad note, police officers being attacked in Solwezi district of Northwestern Province. And this is not the first time. We have seen police officers under attack in so many parts of this country. So this must be stopped with immediate effect. Zambia Must Prosper Party sympathizes with all the affected police officers and civil servants in this country, and even those that have lost their jobs based on mere suspicion of having links to opposition political parties in this country. Zambia Must Prosper Party President, Mr. Kelvin Fubebwalia, and his team commits to curtail this trend once ushered into government come 2026. It is counterproductive, vindictive, and destroying the One Zambia, One Nation motto, which has held this country together for many years.
The Paralegal Alliance Network, a network of organizations and individuals promoting access to justice and human rights, has urged the UPND administration to ensure a referendum on the Bill of Rights is held before the 2026 general elections. Network board chairperson Eugene Kabireka says he does not expect the UPND administration to do a copycat of the 2016 referendum, especially that while in opposition, it vehemently opposed the idea of holding the referendum alongside the general elections. Mr. Kabireka says that the New Dawn administration must respond to the recent call by the Human Rights Commission for a clear and transparent roadmap towards amending the Bill of Rights in order to include economic, social, and cultural rights.
We should not repeat. After all, the UPND that time was very opposed to having during the elections. I don't think they should be able to do that again. Let's have the referendum done before 2016 so that we can have a full constitution with a Bill of Rights there. That is my take. It is a enhanced protection of people's rights built there. So what we need to do is to finalize that and take it for a referendum, and we can be able to organize a referendum. It just takes political will, and it will be bad to try and do the referendum during the election time.
Still in our local news, the Bankers Association of Zambia has described as tough the decision by the Bank of Zambia to increase the statutory reserve ratio from 9% to 11.5% meant to address the volatility in the exchange rate. Association Chief Executive Officer Leonard Mwanza says although the decision is meant to reduce the amount of Zambian kwacha in circulation, it is hoped that this measure is not permanent. Mr. Mwanza says that the country is already seeing the pressure of the dollar and that with this decision, it will have a reverse impact because the pressure will now get to the kwacha. Mr. Mwanza has explained that once the kwacha is in circulation, it will have an intended intention of increasing the cost of funds. He further explains that what this move means is that the liquidity that banks would normally hold for each deposit for every kwacha, they will have to reserve 11.5%, which will be deposited with the central bank.
They will now have to leave more kwacha or be deposits held with the central bank. So that will reduce market liquidity. So what it means is what is available for on-one lending has been reduced. And when they are getting new deposits, they will cost more because, there will be pressure now. Everyone looking for the same kwacha from the same customers. So there will be that increase in the price of funds. That's how it will work. So you expect the kwacha to be in high demand because that which was circulating the banks will now, a bit of it will now be cutted away and kept with the central bank, where they will not earn any interest. It is a reserve. It doesn't earn any interest. So to compensate for that loss of a potential earning asset, you have to increase the cost on both. As you're acquiring, getting new deposits, the rest will cost you more, but on the lending side, definitely, you have to adjust that to compensate for the loss of income that this decision has made, because the implication is that if a bank was keeping 1,000 kwacha, before they were required to keep 9% of that as money that is not touched, they don't earn any interest, it's a reserve with the central bank. But now that amount has increased to 11.5%, so it means they won't earn anything on that particular reserve. And how do they get compensated? They can only be compensated by increasing the pricing of funds they're giving to those that wish to borrow.
Economist Kelvin Chisanga says the country is likely to become food insecure if local foods are not harnessed. Mr. Chisanga says there is need for the government to start promoting the production of local foods to ensure national food security. He has noted the need to ensure the copper that is being mined in the country begins to benefit the Zambian people more than foreigners. Meanwhile, Mr. Chisanga says the continued depreciation of the kwacha has brought about a distortion in the financial market outlook.
So the market is actually facing the hardship in terms of dollar supply on the market, and obviously we have seen that there has been this overeating factor that we're able to see in the kwacha. Obviously, what has actually been playing into this whole scenario is the issue to do with the low supply of dollar in the market and the high demand on the other side in terms of its usage. And obviously we have seen that there are a lot of other compounding factors that we're able to see on the table right as we speak. But much of what we would say is that the current situation where dollar inflow is not all that matching up to the demand factors is what actually even leading to the overeating factors that we're able to see on the kwacha. And much of what we have seen that the copper prices as well as other key fundamental element that we could actually put on the table would have actually helped to salvage the effect that we're able to see. So even when you look at the aviation industry, we have actually been expecting to say that since COVID has really slowed down, we should be able to see an inflow of tourists or other economic agents that should be able to flock into the market and ensuring that they bring also the much needed resource when it comes to the dollar supply channels. Much of what I would say is that yes, currently we have a very high demanding factor on the dollar usage, and we've got a very little supply, or low supply, I should put it, on the other side of dollar. So that has actually also been one of the steadily model which we're also looking at trying to mitigate the impact. Much of what I would say that the measure that has been taken by the Bank of Zambia is one of the issues that I would say it's basically coming to help save the effect that we should be able to see prolonged in this. And much of what also we can say that we are about to do the monetary policy rate, which should be able also to be anchored within a certain nominal range. And if we are to go beyond certain factors, considering the market pattern that we are trying to build, it will actually distort a number of key fundamentals on the side of the market supply as well as.
The Lusaka City Council has attributed the continued flooding of the city after a heavy downpour to illegal construction of structures by some members of the public. Council Public Relations Manager Chola Mwamba has lamented that some people are in the habit of not consulting the local authority before putting up structures and fail to follow the laid-down procedures as stipulated in the Urban and Regional Planning Act. Ms. Mwamba has also cited the unplanned settlement as another contributing factor to flooding in the city, as some areas do not have planned areas for the drainage system. She, however, stated that the council is not sitting idle but is doing everything possible to end this problem.
Unplanned settlement is also a problem because unplanned settlements have no planned area for drainage systems. As a result, they will find that that place is flooded after the heavy downpours, and they are calling on the local authority to come on board to sort out the problem, or the DMMU. It is actually a problem because the place where they are living was not planned. The drainage system is not existing. So as a result, you automatically see these floods in such places. And then the other thing is the indiscriminate disposal of waste. You may agree with me that you see the people that trade in the CBD and other areas. They trade, some of them trade in undesignated places. And at the end of the day, they generate waste that they actually dispose indiscriminately. You would find that somebody is throwing garbage in an inspection chamber. Somebody is throwing garbage in the drainage system. After that, expect that that inspection chamber will be filled with garbage, that drainage system will be filled with garbage, and the flow of water will be compromised. It can't flow from one point to another. Hence the backflows, hence the floods that we see. So we are calling members of the public, we are calling on everyone to come on board in Lusaka to ensure that we take responsibility on certain things so that we avoid these floods that we see today. The local authority is not sitting idle. We are doing our best to ensure that we end this problem.
A team of Indian doctors from Validam Health Medical Travelers set up a 2-day camp at St. John's Hospital in Lusaka to conduct free medical screening for members of the community. Vedam Health co-founder Rankaj Chadnam says that the medical travel platform has been set up to help reduce the cost of traveling for Zambians to other countries to seek a specialized medical treatment. And Medicity Hospital Director of Cardiac Surgery, Harpreet Wasia, says the team is in Zambia to help patients with cardiac issues get the best possible treatment. Meanwhile, St. John's Hospital Chief Medical Officer Charles Migelo says the country is grateful to receive the team of doctors, saying Zambia is not excluded from the disease burden that the world is grappling with. Professor Migelo says diseases pose a great stress to government, hence the visit by the professional health personnel is timely and cost-saving. He says there is need for the private sector to also supplement government's effort in ensuring that the country has a healthy citizenry. Professor Migelo says the hospital has partnered with the Indian doctors for the 2-day camp to treat cardiovascular as well as cancer diseases. Gwembe district in Southern Province is said to have its first ever filling station. The service station, which will be put up by Mount Meru, will be located in Munyumbwe area. Area Member of Parliament Tyson Simuzingili, who has confirmed the development, has described it as a great milestone. Mr. Simuzingili says that this coming of the filling station will cut down on the great cost that the business community and the public at large have been incurring each time they want to refuel their vehicles or buy fuel for their various activities.
In the life history of our district, we have never had a filling station. And our people were toiling through to many areas looking for fuel. But I'm happy and proud to announce that Mount Meru is going to set up a filling station in Munyumbwe, Gwembe constituency. This is good news for us. This is good news for our businessmen. This is good news for our travelers. And this is good news for the entire Gwembe, because this will reduce the cost of doing business. Instead of going far, they will get the fuel within reach. I'm so excited because this will also create employment for our youths. They will need attendants, they will need cleaners, they will need security, and many other jobs. This will all go to the people and youths of Gwembe. So youths of Gwembe, please be expectant. As soon as it starts operating, you should be rest assured that the employment opportunities will be there for you. I would like to thank the New Dawn government for creating a conducive environment. We have had successful governments, but did we have a filling station? The answer is no. Why? Probably there was no conducive business environment. But the New Dawn government has created such a lucrative business environment so that investors can come. I'm imagining now that we have investors that are coming to invest in the mines, and then they will not hassle to get fuel because the fuel will be within reach. I would like to thank Mount Meru for selecting Gwembe as an investment destination. We are so happy and we are proud that you have chosen Gwembe. May you continue even as you set up the filling station.
In international news, we monitored DW.
Families who lost loved ones in a deadly crowd crush in South Korea over 3 months back remain dismayed at the pace of investigations. 159 mostly young people died in Seoul's Itaewon district last year on October the 29th after hundreds packed into a narrow alley during Halloween celebrations. A police investigation has since sought criminal charges against mainly law enforcement officials for failing to plan and respond to anticipated crowd numbers. A former police chief and former mayor are among 6 officials arrested. But families who lost loved ones on that day told DW accountability should stretch to the very top.
Early in the morning of last October 30th, Cho Mi-eun got the call every mother dreads. Her son Ji-han had been killed, and she needed to come to identify his body.
I asked if it was a mistake, and he told me to come, so I hurried there. When I went into the emergency room, Ji-han was lying down. But he looked so clean and pretty that I didn't think this was a dead boy, my son.
Lee Ji-han was a promising actor and one of 159 mostly young people who died in the Halloween crush. Over 3 months later, Lee's father is still infuriated at the negligence that led to so many deaths.
Emergency calls were made one by one starting at 6:34 p.m. And even though there were 11 reports before 10:15, the accident still happened and police were dispatched only 4 times. If the police had handled the situation properly, this disaster would never have happened. Not a single person would have died.
The tragedy has shaken confidence in public officials. This is the alley where the crowd crush took place last Halloween, just 50 meters from exit 1 of Itaewon Station. As more information emerges from various investigations, the same questions remain. Why weren't better safety measures in place and emergency services quicker to respond? Initially, some top officials suggested the disaster could not have been prevented, leading to protests by the victims' families and their supporters seeking the truth. And while several police and local officials have been indicted for negligence, high-level officials have so far been spared. Anger at the authorities' perceived foot-dragging is strong.
We hope that the police and parliamentary investigations would uncover the causes and we could return to our daily lives and focus solely on remembering the victims. But that expectation turned into despair. We didn't get answers to the questions we expected, but ended up with a superficial, shallow investigation.
Public pressure has had at least some effect. This week, the government unveiled reforms of its national safety system.
The number of people using the subway and bus and traffic data will be closely monitored. If the number of people at any site looks dangerously excessive, that information will be shared with local officials as well as police and fire departments. This plan will ensure that such dangerous situations do not occur again.
Such reassurances can do little to console Jihan's parents and sister.
We're just asking for a sincere apology for the bereaved families, understanding and sympathy for our hearts, and for our children to have a proper memorial built in a warm place.
Mornings this week begin with 159 bows as family members mark 100 days since the Itaewon crowd crush tragedy. But those families are still waiting for answers to their questions and for those ultimately responsible to finally be held accountable for their failures.
Correspondent Frank Smith, who filed that report, joins me now from Seoul with more. Frank, police have arrested 6 officials and recommended criminal charges against others. Why do family members think this is inadequate?
Well, the family members that I spoke to, they expressed to me the gravity of this tragedy. 159 people died here, and they believe the accountability needs to reach the very top. That includes the Minister of Interior and Safety, Lee Sang-min, who initially, within 48 hours of this disaster, suggested that it could not have been prevented, as well as the National Police Chief and even the Prime Minister. Those individuals, again, not being held accountable, or calls from the presidential office, Yoon Suk-yeol, to ask for their resignations. I think many of the family members feel that this is kind of adds insult to injury when it's not taken to the same gravity of again, this tragedy.
Speaking of top officials from the government, you had South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol, who apologized for the tragedy last year. But as we saw in your report, Frank, those who lost family members in the tragedy don't think that's sincere enough. Why do they believe that?
Well, I think it has to do with the apology not really being the same as they feel taking responsibility, and also the nature of some of the other remarks that officials have made. For example, the Prime Minister also suggested that one of the victims who committed suicide, took his own life after his friend had died, should have been more, had a stronger will in seeking treatment. Also, on the 49th day following this tragedy, rather than attend a special Buddhist memorial that was organized, that was attended by hundreds, President Yoon attended a Christmas lighting ceremony and behaved jovially there. And I think that really rubbed the family members the wrong way as well.
And family members are also demanding a memorial to their loved ones who perished in this tragedy. Any progress on that?
Well, the city, Seoul City Hall, received this request. They've denied the request to be placed of this memorial be placed at Gwanghwamun Square. It's still unclear where they might place it. It might be placed at Noksapong Station, which is near Itaewon Station, where the temporary memorial is now. But the city also denied access to the square for their march. And I think we also need to talk about politics a bit here. If you're a liberal, a left-winger, you're more likely to be supportive of the family members, and a right-winger you're not. And there was a conservative that interrupted actually the bowing ceremony, even in the package that I played, and conservative sort of radical Christians suggesting that those that had died were devil worshippers celebrating Halloween. So this political divide also needs to be recognized as an influence here.